Okay, so we're about to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Metro Board Chair Paul Smedberg, and I represent the Commonwealth of Virginia on the Metro Board of Directors. I'm joined by my colleague and alternate director, Bryna Helfer, who represents the federal government. Also with me this evening is Metro's Chief Financial Officer, Yetunde Olamide, and Jennifer Ellison, Metro's Board Corporate Secretary. Do we have any electeds? I don't think we have any electeds with us this evening. I didn't see any, okay. So I want to welcome everyone to this public hearing on Metro's proposed fiscal year 2025 budget and capital improvement plan. This hearing is convened by the Metro Board of Directors to gather public comments on 2 dockets. First, docket B24-01, Metro's proposed fiscal year 2025 capital improvement program and federal fiscal year 2025 grant applications. And second, docket B24-02, Metro's proposed fiscal year 2025 operating budget and associated fare and service proposals. Notice of this hearing was made by publication in the Washington Post, and ads were placed in El Tiempo Latino, the Korean Times, Washington China News, Washington Afro-American, AdRef, Dainai, as well as through social media in English and Spanish. And signs were placed in all Metro rail stations, on buses, and Metro access vehicles. And ambassadors provided information at select high ridership bus stops. Notice was also made available, or was made online and sent to all jurisdictions within the Metro compact area and to area libraries. We are looking forward to hearing from everyone who's joined us this evening to provide their testimony. But before we take testimony, we'll have a brief presentation from our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Olamide, that provides details on both the initial proposal for Metro's fiscal year 2025 budget and a revised proposal that depends on additional funding from the jurisdictions in regard to Metro services. Ms. Olamide.
Thank you, Mr. Smedberg. Good evening, Chairman Smedberg, members of the board, and public. My name is Yetunde Olumide. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Executive Vice President at the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. This evening, I'll present the original FY25 proposed operating budget and 6-year capital improvement program on our revised proposal released last month that takes into account preliminary financial commitments from Metro's jurisdictional partners. First, I'd like to cover the context of Metro's FY25 budget. Since last summer, we have shared that Metro must confront an unprecedented $750 million budget deficit in the coming fiscal year beginning on July 1. Ridership and passenger revenue, while improving, have not fully recovered and are further at risk of severe service cuts are needed to close the deficit. Operating costs are directly related to service levels, and a deficit this large without additional funding requires looking at service cuts and fare increases. On the capital side, the proposed FY25 through 30 6-year CIP planned investments total about $11 billion, and FY25 capital budget is $2.4 billion, with investments focused on reducing the backlog of unmet capital programs and projects. Metro, as I mentioned earlier, is confronting an unprecedented $750 million budget deficit in the coming fiscal year. We're committed to being open and transparent about the impact on service and the region if we can't close the budget gap. Metro is legally required to present a balanced budget each year, and the fiscal FY25 budget proposals reflect our current funding situation. The proposed budget eliminates the $750 million deficit through drastic service cuts and administrative cuts, fare increases, transferring funding for preventive maintenance, and cost savings initiatives. We acknowledge the proposed budget would be painful to our customers and employees and would severely limit the services we provide to the community. Just as ridership is accelerating, we would have to reduce rail and bus service below what is needed for the number of people currently riding Metro. Starting from $750 million gap, Metro's internal efficiencies generate net savings of $124 million, and PM transfer increases would further reduce the gap by $193 million. The service cuts and deep administrative reductions result in a $500 million decrease. Okay. Okay, we're good. All right.
There we go.
A $500 million decrease in operating expenses, while the revenue loss from major service cuts, including non-passenger revenue, impacts total about $95 million. The fare and parking increase would generate $29 million more in revenue for a net savings of $433 million, and thus closing the FY25 deficit. Without a sustainable funding source, the FY25 proposed budget presents an unrecognizable Metro due to the unprecedented service cuts necessary to close the operating deficit through internal levers. Give us a moment while we deal with the technical difficulty. Okay.
There we go.
To help close Metro's FY25 operating deficit, the proposed budget would reduce service by roughly 1/3 and increase fares by about 20%. Specific changes to Metrobus include eliminate Metrobus service on 67 of 135 lines and reduce service on 41 of 135 lines. On Metro Rail, the system would reduce service on all lines. 10 p.m. system closures, 10 stations closed as well based on lowest ridership, and Red Line and Silver Line turnbacks. On Metro Access, the service area would be reduced based on the reduction in the fixed route network. Metro would also increase fares and parking rates by about 20%. Now on the revised proposed budget. So on Thursday, February 8th, Metro's general manager released a revised budget based on preliminary financial commitments from Metro's jurisdictional partners. The revised FY25 proposed budget adopts a regional approach that requires collaboration and assistance from all stakeholders, including Metro, its riders, and Metro's funding jurisdictions. Now, what can Metro control? Aggressive expense management and oversight by Metro will keep FY25 gross expenses at FY24 levels. That's a 0% growth. This would be achieved through salary and wage freezes of about $38 million in FY25, $50 million in recurring administrative savings, reducing non-personnel expenditure by about $11 million, targeted service cuts for $20 million in savings. The cost reductions result in $119 million in FY25. To fully close our FY25 operating deficit, the revised 25 proposed budget includes $104 million in preventive maintenance transfers. While this lever can provide relief on the operating budget, it decreases capital funding for infrastructure projects and will accelerate Metro's looming capital deficit. As part of its forward-looking plan, Metro will optimize service through targeted rail service cuts and a redesigned bus network focused on delivering the most useful network with available resources. On Metro Bus, in FY25, instead of service cuts on bus, FY24 service levels would be maintained. On Metro Rail, Metro would continue frequent all-day service while more efficiently scheduling peak service periods to align with ridership levels. There would also be more 6-car trains where shorter trains provide sufficient capacity. On Metro Access, Metro would preserve the current service area. Fares are proposed to increase at 12.5% instead of the 20% originally proposed. As of February 2nd, 2024, Metro's funding jurisdictions have communicated $480 million in additional funding in FY25 above the 3% cap. Maryland's budget includes $150 million. Budget conferees have been appointed by both the House and Senate in Virginia to resolve the differences in their respective budgets as well. DC leadership sent a letter indicating their commitment to $200 million in additional subsidies. Metro is grateful that the region is working together to address its operating deficit and communicated these additional funding amounts. Although Metro's proposed FY25 capital budget is fully funded, future funding constraints will shrink the capital program, leaving the state of good repair and modernization needs unmet, as well as reduced reliability. Generally consistent with what was presented in December, revised amounts reflect updated preventive maintenance transfers. Metro's total capital investment from FY25 through 30 would be $11 billion, and 10-year plan would be $24 billion. While there is still work to be done, and we look forward to hearing from the public on the budget process, we hope this revised budget proposal is responsive to the feedback and requests of our partners and stakeholders. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Olumide. Before we call our witnesses, I'd like to explain the testimony process this evening. We'll begin with speakers who have registered in advance. Please come to the podium when the microphone up here at the front of the room when I call on you to speak. Pardon me. If you need a microphone brought to you, please let us know or raise your hand, and we'll make sure someone gets one to you. When I call upon speakers, I'll also note the next two people in the queue so you can be prepared to come forward when it's your turn. If you haven't yet, pardon me, Brian, did you want to finish this?
Is it on? Yep, you guys can hear me. If you haven't yet registered and want to speak, please see staff outside of the registration table. If you've registered in advance, please make sure you checked in at the registration table to let us know that you're here. You can watch the hearing live online at www.wmata.com/budget, and the video will be archived on our Metro Forward YouTube channel. For the public record to accurately reflect who's providing testimony, I'd ask that you please state your name and any organization you may represent before beginning your testimony. Since this hearing is being recorded and will be available on YouTube, please do not provide any personal information like address, phone number, or email in your testimony. Elected public officials will be allowed 5 minutes, and everyone else will be allowed 3 minutes each. You'll hear a beep when you have 15 seconds remaining, and that's your cue to sum up any remaining testimony. Extra time will be given for translation if needed. We ask that you stay within your time limit because we want to make sure that everyone who wants to speak has a chance to be heard. I also want to note that each speaker is only able to speak once at each hearing. Finally, I want to take a moment to recognize that this is where we listen to you, and this is your opportunity to comment on the proposals, and we are here to listen and just take it all in. So we won't be responding today. So we won't be able to answer your questions during the testimony, but Metro staff is available outside to answer questions, and detailed information about the budget, including what was just presented, is also available at wmata.com/budget. Your comments will become part of the public record that will be reviewed by all of the Metro Board of Directors. Changes to the options presented here tonight may be proposed in response to testimony received and subsequent staff analysis. And now, we're very pleased to be able to call the first witness. And as a reminder, please tell us your name, any organization you may represent before you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryna. I apologize for that. Mr. Karantonis, County Board Member, were you wanting to speak, or? Yeah, well, 3 minutes then. We'll give you 3 minutes.
So thank you for holding this meeting here today. My name is Takis Karantonis. I'm Vice Chair of the Arlington County Board, but first and foremost, I'm a writer of WMATA for many years, for all the 20 years that I've been in this region and living in Arlington. I cannot believe that we are here discussing what we are discussing. We are discussing the very basic infrastructure of our region, a region of more than 6 million people that depend on the ability to provide public transportation service. This is unprecedented to even discuss eliminating 67 of 135 lines in our bus system, knowing how many riders there are, knowing how much of our ridership came back after the pandemic, how important this is for so many households. Metro Rail is not just a commuter system, neither is a bus system a commuter system. It is a basic infrastructure of our economy, of our way of life here in the Washington, D.C. General Metropolitan area. It is very critical to Arlington, all of it. I believe that about 60% of our bus service is intertwined with WMATA. I use it every day to come to this office here, and I cannot imagine that we can go forward with this budget proposal. It is, of course, as an elected official now, it's of course part of my job to make everything in our power to find solutions here. Most importantly, viable and sustainable solutions for the future. But I implore you to review and revise the budget and do everything you can to get the elected officials of this tri-state region to fix the gap. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karantonis. I don't
I'll
have
call the next witness. Sorry about that. The next witness is Luke Etienne.
Yeah. Good evening, Luke.
All right. It's just the timer isn't resetting.
Oh, hold on. We got to set that. Yeah. There you go.
All right. I'm Luke Etienne. I'm a student at the George Washington University. It's my first year living here in the DC metropolitan area. And Metro has, of course, been crucial to my experience and to the experience of many other students who live here. So I'm here to make known how this would in particular affect our student community. When I saw the public notice for this hearing, I decided to run a survey of fellow students, and I got 200 or so responses. And of those, almost 9 in 10 use Metro Rail at least once a week, and 2 in 10 use it on the daily. We have half of our students use Metro to get to their job or to their internship, and 1 in 12 use it in order to commute from home to school. Eliminating service from various stations, cutting these dozens of bus lines, it would be a great inconvenience, to say the least. 80% of respondents rated these changes as having a great deal of impact on their lives, only 2% said that there would be little or no impact. Some comments that I received while running the survey include, Metrorail is my lifeline and one of the main reasons I chose DC to study. The increased time between trains and earlier closing time would make it basically impossible for me to continue with my extracurriculars. The Metro is vital to the fabric of DC and what makes the city so accessible. Obviously, Metro is vital to our student and our young professional populations, not to mention that this would also disproportionately affect those with lower incomes who also do not have access to a private vehicle. For those who rely on Metro, this will be a great hindrance to their mobility, to say the least. And for those who choose Metro, this will be another incentive to drive, which will add more to our congestion problem, which we all know does not need worsening. This will be an irreparable damage to Metro's image, at least for the next couple of years. Just as we're recovering ridership out of the pandemic, it's going to take a large hit. This will potentially cause a feedback loop in which cuts lead to less ridership, which lead to cuts, which lead to less ridership. And none of us want to see that happen. The subsidies that that were proposed by Virginia, Maryland, DC, they're welcome, but we must find a longer-term solution. We can't go back every year to these governments asking for more money. We must find a more long-term solution so that we have a budget that we can work upon. Our nation's capital deserves a transport system that is the envy of the world. And the only way to do so is to invest in it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Luke. Next, Roseanne Ashby.
And I just want to remind everyone that the podium does go up and down. So if you need more height, it adjusts. So thank you.
Roseanne Ashby, followed by Donald Barrett, followed by Joseph D. Phillips. Good morning, Roseanne.
And good evening.
Evening, sorry.
I am representing the American Council of the Blind of Virginia. I am blind myself, and I live here in Arlington, Virginia. I want to say how very, very critical public transportation is for all people, and particularly for people with disabilities, both paratransit services and fixed route services. I personally use Metro Access as well as Arlington Star when I'm going to unfamiliar places and places where I cannot cross streets safely. I use those services probably 4 or 5 times a week. When I am familiar with an area, I can use Metro Bus and Metro Rail as well. I'm very concerned about the elimination of bus routes and Metro Rail, closing Metro Rail stations. I'm very concerned about the service area being contracted. Now, I thought I had understood from the presentation tonight that, in fact, Metro Access's service area may not be diminished. I hope that is the case. I hope I heard that right. I particularly want to give kudos to Christian Blake. Under his leadership, Metro Access has really become very responsive to the consumer. I particularly love the option that we now have to take Ubers some of the time. For people with disabilities, transportation is essential. Some of us cannot drive, some of us cannot use taxis. If we have physical disabilities, we cannot necessarily use conventional taxis. So accessible public transit, both paratransit and fixed route, are so critical for people with disabilities, for employment, for going to medical appointments, for social services, and for all kinds of things. So again, I urge you to work with the others in the area, Virginia, Maryland, and DC, at ACBVA. My organization is working with our delegates in the state of Virginia. We want to see that additional funds go to WMATA. And again, thank you for what you do, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Ashby. Donald Barrett, followed by Joseph De Phillips.
Up this way?
Yep, someone, yeah,
Thanks, Joe.
there we are.
All right. Is this the mic? Yeah.
Mike.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak. My name is Donald Barrett, and I just turned 72, and you all wonder, well, why are you mentioning that? I guess I want to say
that for the first time in my life, because of the Abilities Ride program from Metro Access, I feel fully and completely independent. As a blind person all my life, I've gotten rides from families and friends and cabs and other kinds of paratransit situations, but this program, the Abilities Ride program, is just outstanding and beyond any reproach. It's the kind of independence that touches your heart and your soul, makes you feel like a fully fledged, free, happy, and independent individual. I think probably those who don't use Metro Access services don't even realize how meaningful it is to be able to go where you need to go and sometimes want to go without any restrictions. And it's certainly not a situation of taking advantage of a program. It's utilizing a service that's been brilliantly crafted to work and work well. And I just have to and wanted to say thank you. Thank you to WMATA. Thank you to Metro Access. Thank you to Christian Blake. Thank you to everyone who had the forward-thinking wisdom and compassion to be willing to formulate a program like this that helps so many people and has made us all feel so very, very independent, happy, and makes life an exciting prospect due to being able to get where you need to go when you need to go there. And with that, I'll stop, and I just want to express my deep and heartfelt thanks to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Next speaker, Joseph DePhillips, followed by Doris Ray.
Hi, good evening. I'm
Evening.
Joseph DePhillips. I'm a consumer from the city of Arlington, county of Arlington, and I want to thank each of you as well. I believe, Mr. Snedberg, you and I are both nutmeggers originally.
That's right.
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Aren't you from Connecticut?
I am.
Yeah, Rocky Hill, I think.
Yeah.
Weathersfield.
Weathersfield.
I want to thank each of you, including Bryna. Bryna knows what it's like to use paratransit and how beneficial it is. And one more shout out to Mr. Karatonis. Thank you. And not only is he advocating for public conveyances, but also paratransit. Just as the previous speakers have said, Don and Roseanne, 43 years ago when I came to Washington, more than that now, 1977, if I wanted to go from Capitol Hill to Laurel, Maryland, or Beltsville on a Sunday, it would take 3 Metro buses. Now I feel, even though I've never driven in my life, I feel I can go anywhere I want, and I can lead a pretty normal existence. Before I talk a little more about the benefits of Metro Access, and believe me, it's come a long way. At one time, you all have seen the press, someone could be on there for 4 hours and have the potential to run out of oxygen. But one thing I'd like to see is Metro Access tighten up on the membership a little bit. When you have such a good service as Metro Access has become, I'm afraid that sometimes Metro Access has lost the original vision for the ADA, which is to treat the most severely disabled. Now it seems if grandma has a hangnail or a forearm shiver, if they go to the correct physician, they can be qualified. And I'd like to see that. At one point, the evaluation process for Metro Access was much more stringent, and it seems to have fallen off a bit. And I say that, I don't want anyone to be hurt, but I'm afraid there are people using the service that it wasn't originally intended for. As far as Uber and Metro Access, if I have to, I don't mind paying a little more, but I urge you not to cut the service area or the time. Sometime you're out on a Friday and Saturday night, and you can't get home to 11:50 or, and in some cases, 1 o'clock. And again, I just like to commend each of you and let you know how important it is in my life, not only for Metro Access and for the paratransit, but to be able to ride the subway, either at a reduced charge or free of charge. I feel with the combination, I can again lead a normal life. If I have an errand and if I have to go to services or anything that you need to do, employment, and again, please consider not to cut the service area and the time frame. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. DePhillips. Next, Doris Ray, followed by Pierre H.
There's the podium. Okay. Right there. You're on.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the WMATA board, as well as WMATA staff that are here and other elected and local officials. My name is Doris Ray, and I'm here representing the Independence Center of Northern Virginia, a community resource and advocacy center that is run by and for people with disabilities living in Arlington, Fairfax, and Loudoun counties, and the independent cities of Alexandria, Fairfax, and Falls Church, an area that has a population of 2.4 million people and spreads over about 1,000 miles, I do believe, square miles. And we want to first say that we appreciate people with disabilities, the thousands who live here in this metropolitan area. The Metro Bus, Metro Rail, and Metro Access services provided by WMATA. And we also understand the unprecedented budget issues and shortfall that we face together as a community. We ask of you to reconsider as you are making the final cuts to the budget that may ultimately be necessary, that you consider the effect of eliminating bus routes, cutting back on service areas, cutting back on operational hours of Metro Rail, and cutting back on the service area for Metro Access, as well as raising fares, will have on people with disabilities and the broader community, particularly those individuals who are marginally economically capable of affording this. Some of us have modest incomes, some of us have low incomes and very low incomes, and we rely on Metro Access and Metro Bus and Metro Rail to get to, because we don't drive, a large majority of us don't drive, we rely on it to have jobs, keep jobs, go to the school, get educated and trained, and also to just do the basics of life. And so we have many questions about this process. One is with regard to the service area for Metro Access, will you be including the partners as partners like Fairfax Connector in the service area that you will redefine because of any budget cuts? We also ask you to go to our state officials and go back to your local governments
30 seconds, Doris.
and make sure that they fully fund. We are there fighting with you. Independence Center of Northern Virginia traveled with our consumers down to Richmond and spoke to our legislators from Northern Virginia and will be sending them our messages during this conference committee. We're working with you. Don't cut the services we need. And to say as a person, please don't cut the 2B and the 1C. Those are long line services. And the 1C takes me to my government center in Fairfax County, I might add.
Thank
and
you,
you're
Ms.
going to
Ray.
take that away.
Thank you, Ms. Ray.
Please, we are working with.
Thank you, Doris. Thank you. Next, Pierre H. And Pierre, could we have your full name, please?
Pierre Hayford, sorry.
Okay. Good evening.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Pierre Hayford. I'm a resident of, oh, I'm sorry. Good evening. My name is Pierre Hayford. I'm a resident of Prince George's County, Maryland. I'm also a student and I'm an employee. I use Metro Rail and bus services several times a week for school, work, and, school, work, and leisure. I find it disappointing that a system as vital as WMATA is still without any dedicated funding source from all three jurisdictions. I thank all three jurisdictions for pledging additional funds on top of the ones from last year, but there's a lot more that needs to be done to close the deficit. The leadership of Randy Clark, the WMATA general manager, has been absolutely astounding this year, and to have the improvements made to the system completely take a 180 due to the service cuts would have a lasting negative effect on WMATA's credibility that's worked so hard to repair and earn. Shifting capital funds to cover the operating expenses for fiscal year 2025 is a risk that that could constrain improvements for the future. Gutting vital maintenance projects and overhaul stuff will represent another risk for everybody, whether you're a customer or driver. And regarding fare increases, I support measures such as increasing parking fees at stations. And while I have no issue paying an increased fare, hundreds of thousands do not have that luxury. I urge the board to find another alternative method of generating revenue. A suggestion I have is to raise the vehicle registration fees for each jurisdiction on larger and heavier vehicles, which have become popular in recent years, or increasing the taxes on businesses and development projects centered around metro stations. The district council has also decided to study the proposal of congestion pricings in downtown. If that were to become a reality, I highly advise the board to look at, to tell the district council to set aside a dedicated portion of this revenue for WMATA. These potential measures are not as swift in recovery as some of the revised budget plans options, but it would create a less harmful impact on riders who may not be as financially flexible to weather an extended period of hiked fares. Accessible and affordable public transportation is an equity issue, and now more than ever, with the rising inflation, cost of living skyrocketing, it's dire to ensure that people are not left behind. Metro is a really very powerful economic tool. Bethesda, Rockville, Reston Town Center, and the Arlington through Boston corridor are all highly successful examples of transit-oriented development. These are all suburbs of the district, yet Metro Rail has enabled these developers to transform these locations into residential and office hubs. WMATA is one of the few systems to be fully built out of its original plan, and we've already done the hard work. We just have to make sure it's fully funded.
Thank you, Pierre. Rod Sedalia, followed by Siawash Azizada. Rod, are you here? Siawash, are you? Yep. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Siawash. I just live around the corner here in the courthouse. Thank you for taking the time to hear us out. We just moved to this neighborhood 2 months ago, and chose specifically this neighborhood due to its access to public transit and the proximity to both my job and my wife's job. My wife and I are both trying to live a car light life. We still own a car, but unfortunately just because of the circumstances. Moving to this neighborhood has been, and being able to use Metro every day for everyday life has been a drastic quality of life improvement. We use both the 2 buses that come right here and Silver and Orange lines. In the last 2 months, we've pretty much replaced almost 90% of our car trips with Metro, just due to the access with amenities that are around here. We plan our medical appointments, errands, grocery shopping, and just being able to explore the city because of the quick headways that currently exist on Metro. If these new service cuts are implemented, we'll be forced back to using our cars and add to the congestion that plagues this area for so many years. The DMV area is some of the most in demand in the country. We deserve and demand a world-class metro system. I don't understand why we don't bat an eye when billions are spent widening highways and Metro only gets scraps. If we care about big problems like climate change or giving everyone an equal access to opportunity, Metro is and should be a major contributor to solving that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex Mendelson, followed by Steve Kaffen. Alex.
Sorry, I'm gonna get a quick timer up.
Okay.
Can you raise that podium a little bit?
Yeah. Here we go. All right. Hello, my name is Alex Mendelsohn, and I'm here representing myself. I'm a local high school student in Arlington County, and WMATA plays an important part in my life. And I'd like to think that I'm giving all high school students a voice who don't own a car and rely on public transportation for independence. Along with being a transit enthusiast, Metro and Metro Bus transport me and my peers across the region, whether that be to school, extracurricular activities, or social gatherings. I'd like to take a moment to appreciate how much WMATA has improved over the last few years, specifically referencing improved service levels and an ambition to take on projects related to the customer experience. A healthy public transit system is key for our region. That being said, I'd like to reflect on WMATA's budget proposals for fiscal year 2025. As for funding, it is imperative that WMATA is able to pass a budget that is able to sustain today's service levels. It looks as though WMATA will be able to get most of the money it needs for the next fiscal year. However, it is uncertain if funding will make it past the Virginia Senate at this point. I strongly urge the Virginia Senate to make sure WMATA has enough funding to sustain existing service levels. Despite this, if small fare increases and a preventative maintenance transfer is part of the short-term solution, I would be okay with that. However, it is essential that preventative maintenance transfers are only used to bridge the gap for the next year or two, as taking resources from the capital budget will only hurt the system's state of good repair. In the long term, it is important to establish a dedicated funding structure. As part of this, I fully support establishing a regional sales tax or similar mechanism to ensure this agency has reliable funding, and I would encourage our local and state leaders to pursue such a policy. As for fare and parking adjustments, while they make up a relatively small portion of the budget, they are important mechanisms that WMATA can use to help raise revenue. To address the existing shortfall, I support the proposed 12.5% increase in general fares. However, I would like to caution against raising the maximum fare for Metro Rail, as increasing fares on a trip type that is struggling to return to pre-pandemic levels is bad for ridership growth. Also, I'm willing to support raising the cap on late night and weekend fares as much as $2.50 or $3 on the rail system. Lastly, WMATA should prioritize implementing open payment and fare capping systems. As for parking, WMATA should implement a dynamic pricing system at the lots and garages it owns so it can better take advantage of existing space. Also, Metro should use the long-term and overnight parking facilities to provide overnight and multi-day parking. As for service and operations, I have 3 main suggestions. First, I would like to make sure WMATA is focused on implementing the Better Bus Network redesign as quickly as possible. An improved network has the ability to boost both bus and rail ridership at no additional cost. Specifically, I want to emphasize the importance of improving, eliminating, or consolidate routes that operate less frequently than 30 minutes. Lastly, WMATA should increase operating efficiencies by closing the Cinderbed bus division on weekends, operating the Rex and 29 buses out of a surrounding division. Moving on to the capital improvement program, I would like to place a lot of emphasis on fleet expansion. Ordering new buses and the 8000 series rail cars should be a priority for the upcoming year, as it will improve the system by replacing an aging fleet and allow for service increases. Also, I'd like to caution against a rush transition to a fully electric bus fleet. These buses are expensive and require more space to store, and the way for WMATA to best meet environmental goals is to provide more service to take cars off our roads. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and if it's okay, could I provide each member of the panel a copy of my speech?
Sure.
Thank you.
Who knows, Alex, you might be a future board member. Yeah. Okay, Stephen Caffin, followed by Brian Gannon. Stephen, good evening.
Move this back down.
It's quite all right.
Hi, I'm Steve Caffin. This is the 8th consecutive year that I've been testifying formally, and actually I just flew back from Brazil this morning in order to be able to testify. So it's good to be here, and this is an important time to testify. I just to let you know, because I'm proud of my 2023 statistics. I took 573 bus trips and visited 20 rail stations. And this is as a user, certainly not as an auditor. And almost 2,000 miles of travel in the top 1%. So, I love this system. And so it's good that we have this opportunity every year to talk. There's no way I'm going to get through all of this, but I leave that's what we do. I'm on the Best Bus Initiative. I was on the Bus Transformation Project. I'm on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I'm Vice Chair of the Bus Rail Committee. But my comments are my own. I want to state first that, as you know, and this bothers me tremendously, even though I'm not a user, a substantial number of Metro Access users will actually be losing service if the worst-case scenario is implemented. To take away service for people who depend for their lives on a particular kind of service when they have it is the word is unconscionable. And so I know we can find a way to do a grandfathering in or what have you, or maybe it may not be necessary, but it's an extremely disturbing and important thing for those who use Metro Access and for those who don't. The other thing I'd like to mention quickly is that I believe that we can learn from our experience and do better such that next year we don't have as much cost to fill in. I think WMATA should set up a rider experience committee, working with Sarah or working with an ombudsman. And I'm glad people, I'm sure, will volunteer. They'd look at prospective changes in expenditures from a rider standpoint. There are numerous expenditures that needed not to be made, shouldn't have been made, and were just wrong. And I'm going to list them out and I'll present them there. But if we can cut these back, next year we won't have as much severity to look at. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Caffin. Brian Gannon, followed by William Wong. Brian.
Back up we go. Good evening, Metro Board members and staff. My name is Brian Gannon. I'm a resident right here in Arlington County. I love having the access to the corridor right here and having easy access to Metro Rail and various ART and Metro bus routes. I'm a very frequent rider. I commute by Metro Rail 3 to 4 times a week out to Reston. I've been riding the Silver Line pretty much since Phase 1 opened up. I guess it's been about 10 years now. So I do rely on that. It's great not having to drive and deal with the tolls and the traffic and all of that. So I hope that service frequencies can be maintained. I know where service cuts hopefully are not on the table so much anymore, but I would like not to see service cuts, station closures, early closings, any of that. I do recognize a fare increase is probably pretty likely. I hope it can be minimized, especially for long distance riders who got pretty hard with last year's fare increase. It adds up after a while, and I know that's a burden for some people. I know the budget proposal also calls for increased use of 6-car trains. I hope that can be looked at. You've been running 6-car trains pretty much the last week and a half exclusively, and the crowding has been noticeable in terms of that. And my commuter trains have been really packed out towards Tyson. So I hope 8-car trains can be maintained. I mean, you spent years and years promising more 8-car trains, and this coming from someone who remembers when you used to run 4-car trains during rush hour back in the 80s and 90s. So it's been great. So hopefully we can keep what we've got and not take a step backwards. So. And like others, I really hope dedicated funding is something that comes through so we're not doing this again year after year. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. William Wong, followed by Lisa Brown.
Testing. Hi, everyone. I'm William Wong. Thank you, everyone, for letting me testify. I'm representing myself, but I just wanted to say, as someone who commutes from Innovation Center to Metro Center 3 days a week to get to work in DC, the proposed service cuts would be absolutely terrible in my case. I had over like 6,800 miles of Metro Rail last year, and having either like 20-minute service cuts or a 12 or like 25% fare increase would not be optimal for me. I believe I calculated, so not having to drive into DC every day, in taking into account toll roads, fees, parking, maintenance, et cetera, I was able to save probably around like $14,000 from not having to drive into DC every day. And so having those service cuts would make Metro less of a viable option for me to get into work. And so I heavily disagree with them. I'm glad that we don't have the proposed draconian cuts, hopefully, based on the funding provided by DC, Virginia, and Maryland. Although the 12.5% increase is not something I'm that happy about, although I recognize the possible necessity of it. Although I would like to say, that many others have said here, that getting a dedicated source of funding, either through, say, like having Metro advocate either for a regional tax or increasing ridership by just increasing density and development around the Silver Line stations, would be lovely, so that we don't have to have this meeting every year, and so also that I don't have to endure 12.5% fare increases every year. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Ms. Brown? Ms. Lisa Brown, followed by Patrick Sheehan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Brown, and I live in D.C. between Woodridge and Brooklyn Station. Brooklyn and Woodridge. I have a lot to say, but I'm gonna keep it short, but I'm gonna write it down. In our area, they're trying to make it more dense, more apartments, and encourage people to use Metro. And in our area, they took every bus line out. It was gone, and they said no alternatives. So I'd have to walk to Rhode Island, or have to walk to Brooklyn, or Fort Totten. All my backups was eliminated. And we have a lot of seniors back there, disabled. Me, I go to work, kids go to school, and all our bus lines were H6, E2 were eliminated. That's not good. You know, we have to have some kind of way to get around, and we're dependent on the bus. And I know for me, I moved here from Atlanta, and I bought my house specifically because near the bus line, because sometimes I don't want to drive. In Atlanta, you have to drive everywhere. I'm a NATS season pass holder. I don't want you to mess with the train stations. I don't want you to cut the trains off early, and I got to miss part of my game. You know, it's a lot of folks that probably NATS, you know, and you encourage us to take the train, and I love it. But if you close at 9 o'clock, I have to leave before the game is over. And as a season pass holder, that's a lot of money, you know. So I want you to consider that. And, you know, public transportation is public transportation. It's for the people. All lines may not make money, but that's not the point. It's the accessibility. And since the Metro train was built after, it kind of retrofit, people have to get to the train. And that's what a lot of our buses in Northeast. It's a lot of neighborhoods that you cannot walk to the Metro. So we need our buses just to get to the train. And I like the better bus idea, but I didn't think we would have no bus. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're really hoping we don't have to make those cuts, obviously. Patrick Sheehan, followed by Ben Lynn. Patrick.
Thanks. My name is Patrick Sheehan. I'm chair of the AAC, and I think, as probably you've seen tonight, and it was apparent last night and also on Monday night, a good number of people who've been before the mic have been disabled people. And they are concerned about their ability to get around, their ability to use Metro access, their ability to use the ability to ride. They don't want to see the system cut. Under the fiscal cliff or doomsday scenario, as we affectionately call it, you could lose up to 9,000 people out of the 36,000 people that ride Metro access if the service area is cut. So as you have heard tonight from others, we do want to fully fund Metro. We want the service area to be intact, and we need to keep the schedule intact. Those are the basic things that we are interested in, because that area is a safety net for those individuals that need Metro access, that need the ability to ride by the paratransit system. They don't have the ability to turn to a car to supplement their rides. So we need to have the safety net fully funded so that the entire area is safe and efficient for those individuals. We had an individual come to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and she asked the committee, she said, if my ride is cut, how do I get to my job? What do I do? Give me an answer, help me. And we didn't have an answer. We just said we didn't know. It made me feel very helpless for that individual, because she's depending on our committee to help her get around. 9,000 people could be in the same boat if this fiscal cliff doomsday budget is enabled. The revised budget is better. I would like to make sure that that's fully guaranteed, that all of the Metro access budget is not cut. Lastly, I would say, we've talked about Virginia, we've talked about DC, and we've talked about Maryland, but surprisingly enough, I haven't heard anything about the federal government. And I don't know what we're doing with respect to that money that is being, the 30, I forget what it was, $30 million or so that they were asked to put in. I think that it's important. Every penny counts, because I know that even with respect to staff at WMATA, who do excellent work, as you say all the time, they're being impacted because they're not going to be given raises. So anyway, thank you for your work on this. My committee stands ready to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Ben Lynn, followed by Stuart Schwartz. Mr. Lynn.
Good evening. My name is Ben Lin. I'm here on behalf of ATU Local 689. We represent more than 15,000 transit workers and retirees across the DC metro area, including 9,000 WMATA employees. As we know, our members and our region faced unprecedented challenges over the past few years. Nonetheless, transit workers have faithfully stayed on the job and kept our region afloat, even through the worst pandemic in over a century. Since then, we have seen reduced ridership, record but receding inflation, increases in violence, and a system pushed to the physical brink, and a stated deficit of hundreds of millions of dollars. Finding the solution to Metro's longstanding and systemic funding problem is essential. However, this solution cannot and must not fall on the backs of working class people. It cannot fall on the backs of the workers either, especially because, and just want to bring up that during the pandemic, they were called frontline heroes because they said in the line, many of our members caught COVID, and a handful of them unfortunately passed away. But also the men and women and those across our region who rely on reliable service to pick up their kid, go to their groceries, and go to school and navigate the region. The freezing of wages for transit workers is short-sighted. A proposal that's being tossed around and telling the workers their pay is frozen until further notice in the midst of a national CDL shortage. And upsurge in violence towards transit workers is a recipe for disaster. Newer workers will go elsewhere to find jobs with guaranteed pay raises and more safety. Older workers will simply retire, and there will be undoubtedly a shortage of operators. mechanics, and so forth. Another proposal on the table to move millions of dollars in preventative maintenance funds to cover holes in the operation is dangerous and risks the lives and security of riders, workers, and the system alike. Lastly, the fare increases will hurt low-income, working-class, and middle-class people the hardest. We need Metro to continue to work. We acknowledge the great work they have done so far to try to push every elected official across the region in the Commonwealth and the state of Maryland and D.C. To help come up with a designated funding, as well as to pursue a long-term decade funding measure. Local 689 members run a world-class and vital public service. Let's not fund it with low-grade priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Stuart Schwartz, followed by Jamila M.
Thank you, Chair Smedberg. Appreciate this. My name is Stuart Schwartz. I am the Executive Director for the Coalition for Smarter Growth. We're a 27-year-old nonprofit. We're leading an 18-group coalition focused on Metro funding and teaming with business groups and ATU 689 to support more funding for the agency. We thank you all for your hard work to identify cost savings and efficiencies to reduce the operating budget gap. And we thank the jurisdictions who proposed $480 million in additional operating funding for FY25, including $130 million proposed by Virginia, split 50-50 with Northern Virginia. In this case, though, the state would only provide $65 million. They're talking about $84.5 million in the House for the following year. But we urge our elected officials to do more to reduce and even close the entire gap. Failure to do so means the service cuts we've heard about tonight and fare hikes, impact on the workforce, delays in the capital program. It's honestly disappointing the state statute requires a 50-50 split on Virginia's share of WMATA funding and that the state's being asked to provide so little. We need to contrast this to the $150 million appropriated last year as extra money for widening just 8 miles of I-64 near Williamsburg, and $322 million proposed just today by the governor to buy tolls down. Not necessarily a bad cause, but they're also going to use $130 million of that to cover unpaid tolls, including by some of the wealthiest folks. And they're going to take $165 million from the proposed arena revenues in the future from Northern Virginia to bring to Hampton Roads. So it all contrasts with what they're willing to put in to Metro, and we can do more. We strongly support Metro's commitment to all-day, frequent, reliable, safe rail and bus service. It's the best way to increase ridership. In fact, Metro bus ridership has returned. Much of it is now exceeding pre-pandemic levels, especially on weekends. And the Better Bus Initiative, including the bus network redesign, offers an opportunity to transform our bus system, just as Alexandria's transformation of Dash was so successful. Frequent all-day bus and rail service is critical to all sectors of the workforce, providing access to jobs and opportunity, saving household transportation costs, and attracting the next generation workforce, not to mention enhancing our economic competitiveness. Metro is key to supporting transit-oriented communities and supporting car-free and car-light living, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Numerous Fortune 500 companies have located here because of the Metro system. But without additional revenues, we are going to face these hard choices. We would love to see the service cuts and fare hikes minimized to the maximum extent possible, and as well as the shift in capital funds to preventative maintenance. We also urge the region to come to an agreement by December 24 on the long-term solution. We can't wait any longer. And while you're focused on the issue, I would just add that the region is committed to locating 75% of jobs in housing and high-capacity metro stations. They've committed to 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and to addressing regional inequities and to focus on access to opportunity. Hard to do all that without Metro. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Is Camila, was that taken off the list? Camila taken off the list? Yes. Okay. Next up, Mallory Brown, followed by Dylan Harvey.
Hello, my name is Mallory Brown. I live in Ward 4 on the S2-S9 line. I'm a young professional working in Reston. Every day that I go into the office, I ride for 3 hours on the Metro, and I'm one of many people who may end up without access to my place of employment due to the budget cuts you all are discussing today. I want to speak to the human aspects of these budget decisions. Most nights, the buses I ride are packed full of tired, hardworking people, mainly people of color. I want to ask you, when the bus doesn't show up for these workers, when the train is so late that she might miss her shift, when he arrives at the metro stop at 10:30 to find it closed because information about changing service is unreliable and hardly ever translated to Spanish, where do you want us to go? When budget cuts leave us stranded on street corners in the freezing cold, how should we get home? We can't all afford to pay for Ubers and Lyft, nor can the planet afford the emissions, nor can our patients afford the extra traffic. The metro is the lifeblood of the city, and it's one of the most beautiful train systems in the entire US. It keeps the DMV economy running, it brings customers into the city, and it brings workers safely home. The city as a whole will lose money if the metro is cut. As it is, the metro needs more funding, not less. Ironically, I was here late today in part because of metro delays. Metro workers deserve higher wages for their labor, not freezes, as they are true public servants. I also came today to demand that no one, especially not our elected officials, obfuscate the truth of the city budget situation to the people gathered here today. The truth is that the city has money to pay for the metro, and I know that we do because the city has money enough for the paychecks of officers who pointed guns at Aaron Bushnell as he burned the Zionist embassy this week. The city has money enough for the weapons that they used to kill Antoine Gilmore as he slept in his car on Florida Avenue in 2021. While Mayor Bowser says that we have money enough to increase the already bloated police budget and room to spare to give to foreign militaries committing genocide, we won't be lied to that the city can't be paying for our ride home on the bus. I want to ask you, please, to keep fighting for more budget for the metro. We rely on it, and I want to ask you to please show that Black and brown lives matter to this administration. Please put the people and the planet over profits here. And it's short-sighted to say that we won't lose money by cutting off the leaves of the tree that we use to survive in this city. The metro is one of the few services that genuinely helps everyone. I love the metro. I came here on the metro, I wrote this on the metro, and I want to see you invest in the metro more. Thank you so much for hearing me and giving us the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Dylan Harvey, followed by Virgilia Collins.
Am I close enough?
Close enough.
Thank you. I said, firstly, I want to begin by thanking you and every other supportive stakeholder throughout the region who has assisted in the creation and maintenance of our regional transit services. Originally, I actually had zero interest in speaking here. As a student who works at the Maryland State Legislature full time, the last thing I wanted to do an hour after work is speak about something I've discussed at work. But I wanted to take the moment to stress the importance of creating communities that are less car reliant and have stronger ties to alternative services such as Metro Rail and the Metro Bus. When my 2003 Acura TL with 300,000 plus miles inevitably broke down, commuting to school in College Park became a pain like no other. The Green Line, as you all know, terminates in Greenbelt. So as a Laurel resident, I had to rely on an alternative service to gain access to the Metro Rail system. This alternative service at the time I thought would be the 89M bus from South Laurel. But due to the construction of my communities, even though a bus route that is only 2 miles away from my house was a 44-minute walk or bike, or there was no alternative bus to get there. The bus route that I had to use instead was the RTA's 302, which took me to Greenbelt, and then I had to catch the C2 to College Park. My car route to College Park was originally around 25 minutes. My bus route was 1 hour and 15. As a full-time student, I have to rely on a 8:15 shuttle from College Park to get to work every day. As a higher level employee now, that isn't sustainable anymore, and I'm forced to Uber. But even when I try to go to class, I run into the inevitable barrier of someone of a lower income, of just not having access to a school that I got into and I currently try to pay for. It adds another burden upon me, and I want to make sure that it's understood. I recognize that every single one of you do not want to cut certain services and do not want to have a smaller budget. That's kind of the point of this whole hearing. And I didn't want to try to pretend like I had a better understanding of the budget than you all. I'm a policy student and I failed econ. I'm not going to pretend like I do. But I just wanted to say that when you all advocate for a better budget or increased service, that we recognize that building communities that are more sustainable and more livable doesn't just help the residents there, it also helps WMATA's ridership. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dylan. Virgilia Collins, followed by Paul Semifort.
Oh, my Lord, this thing. Hi.
There you go.
My name is Virgilia Collins. It's my third time here. I went to the one in Silver Spring and also in D.C. And I just want to know how important it is to have bus service because where I live in between 3 Metro bus rails, 5 bus lines, 4 of them are Metro buses. And but before the Metro rails came to where I live back in '95, I forgot what year it opened up. I used to work at nighttime. I had walked from D.C. into Maryland, like Branch Avenue and Southern Avenue, or Southern Avenue and Ella Road. And I've walked from Eastover Shopping Center. I live near Iverson Mall, and I've walked from Southern Avenue near Willow Road and 23rd Parkway. And this was at nighttime. Those are long walks. And I used to have to walk to work because I couldn't afford bus fare. And that took about an hour. So I used to live near the Green Line Metro in Hyattsville. Before they brought the subway there, I had to walk. If I missed the bus on the weekends, the buses stopped running at 8:30 and 9:30. So I had to walk, and that took an hour. So that's the reason why I don't want you to cut the rails. And then as far as Metro Access, the same thing. Excuse me. I caught the Metro train here, and also yesterday when I went to D.C. And but then when I went to Silver Spring, I could have caught the train, but I caught Metro Access because I would have had to catch 2 buses and 2 trains, and I don't know how long that would have taken. So I'm saying that to say that I can't walk everywhere. I don't mind walking, but my health is deteriorating. When I was younger, I didn't have a problem walking, but now I can sometimes, it's hard for me to stand up more or less walk. So that's another reason why I need the bus and Metro Access. And as far as the fare, I think the last time, the Metro fare on the bus that is, didn't go up every year. And when I started riding it in '73, it was like a quarter and went up 40 cents, and that was a lot of money back then. So I don't know if I really don't have a problem with you raising the fare. If it's just 20 cents, I don't know if you said 20 cents or 20%, but if it's just 20 cents, think how long that's been from a quarter to now $2. And if you were to raise the fare every year, divide 50 into $2, that's only 5 cents a year. So I have no problem with that one. But my main concern is keeping not cutting the bus service in the Metro rails, and maybe cutting back on how often they run, but don't cut them out completely. Thank you.
Thank you, Virgilia. Paul Semmelfort, is Julie Burns on the speaker's list as well? No? Okay. Paul Semmelfort. Paul.
Good evening. I'm Paul Semmelfort, and I am speaking as an individual tonight. I am a member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee and the Metro Access Subcommittee Chairperson. So I'm speaking tonight, of course, about, is it okay? About Metro Access. I know there's been sort of a proposed cut to the service area. I know that y'all, at least for possibly next year, is going to be able to preserve it, which is great, but this type of cut should never be considered for the most vulnerable population who needs to get around. Being a teacher of students with disabilities and hearing the person from the ARC in Silver Spring say, the same students I teach, you're cutting off our soul, you're cutting off our independence, our way of life. We don't have another way of getting around. Majority of us do not have cars to get around. You're cutting off our life when we do these types of changes. I hear customers come to my meetings saying, I don't know whether or not I may be picked up to get to work or from my home if these changes go through, or critical medical places. We're asking, begging, please, we got to find better ways, to do this, and working with you to do that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, I'm told that's the last speaker. Is there anyone else present that would like to have the opportunity to speak? Okay, seeing none, that was our last speaker. The hearing is now concluded. You're welcome to submit additional written testimony, but it must be received by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, March 5th. Testimony can be submitted online at wmata.com/budget. Online, you have the option to complete a survey, to write free-form comments, or upload a letter, petition, or other document. You can also mail your testimony to the Office of the Secretary at WMATA, SECT 2E, P.O. Box 44390, Washington, D.C. 20026-4390. Again, all testimony must be received by 5 p.m. on March 5th. We encourage everyone to submit comments online if possible. You also have the option to speak online. Hearing being held tomorrow at 12 noon. There's a 12 noon online session. Please see staff at the registration desk at the table on your way out if you'd like to participate in that hearing. Information on how to register for the remaining hearing, or the hearing tomorrow, can be found at wmata.com/budget. If you're planning to attend or speak at the subsequent hearing, I'll note that individuals who haven't provided testimony at prior hearings on these topics will be given priority to speak. Again, thank you for joining us here this evening and for taking time to provide your testimony. We all hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.